Timm Johnson has been a member. I think one of our longest standing members, maybe Clarence might be longer.
Clarence, there are a few people still.
But he's been a member of ABAS since 1984, 1985. So he has done every position in the club, everything except treasurer, and then some multiple times. He's done our bus trip for like 10 or 15 years. He is always teaching. He always helps out at the workshops that we have once a month. He's a master gardener. He knows a lot, bottom line. He knows a lot and he loves to teach. He loves deciduous, not so much in favor of pokey plants, conifers, but he still knows what he's doing anyway, even though he doesn't like them so much. He's a treasure in our club, just to have him and his knowledge. And he is getting a well-deserved lifetime membership honor tonight. And that means he's not going to have to spring for the dues anymore. But we don't only have a handful of people in our club that have that honor, Clarence being one, Vincent Cathy Al Young another, Walt Brainerd, and Ann Holgren. And I'm not sure if there's any others. I don't remember them myself. But Timm is has impacted this club in ways that most of us have not. And we are very lucky to have him and to continue to have him for a long time, I hope, as part of our club.
This is not what I plan to talk about. Okay. But this is the view from my garden window looking out into part of our bonsai area. Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. I'll try to make this as painless as possible, but I can't promise, okay? First, I want to thank the board members and also the club members for affording me this honor. And I'd also like to thank the members of our Second Friday study group for putting up with me all these years, because I know I've been a pain sometimes. My family and friends. Okay, my family. Okay, I'll start with my favorite granddaughter. Raise your hand on the list. Okay. Favorite granddaughter. Okay. She's my favorite. She's the only granddaughter I have, so she has to be my favorite, right? Next to her is her father, Stephen. Just raise your hand. Second son, third son, Paul. Oldest grandson, Marcus. Okay. And the three ladies here they're part of my adopted family. Hong, Kim, Amanda. There were others, but unfortunately, work gets in the way sometimes of life, and so they couldn't make it, not yet anyhow. Yeah. I'd like to also thank my friends and my used-to-be friends. Because once I bare my soul, I may not have friends anymore. Okay, so I'll go right into it. I'm going to call this my bonsai journey. Okay, my bonsai journey. So my journey begins with my life journey, and I'll hit an awful lot of my life, and also I get into my bonsai journey. And I plan to share some information and pictures from my past experiences, and to show some pictures of the travels that I've done, and also share some tips about bonsai I've learned throughout the years. Okay, I had very, very humble beginnings, very, very humble. As you can see there, I was born in the Texas cotton fields, and I was raised in a ghetto in Oklahoma. Oklahoma. The president and her husband, they're also from Oklahoma. They're from Oklahoma City. I'm from Tulsa. Okay. This picture right here, 560 Reading Street, is the house that we lived in from the time I was 5 till I was 12. Anyone here familiar with the term shotgun shack or shotgun house? Okay, so okay, some of you know what I'm talking about. It's the house that we lived in, my parents, and we had up to 5 children living here. And a shotgun house and shotgun shack is where you can stand at the front door and look straight through the house through the back door. There are no hallways, just these 3 rooms, sometimes 4 rooms. But age 16, my parents eventually bought a house, and at that time we had 7 children, and we moved into a 2-bedroom house. Okay, at that time, Oklahoma, my city, was rigidly segregated, and blacks and whites did not mix. But when we moved to this area, we were transitioning from that area from being a white community to a black community. And so we still had some white neighbors that surrounded us. And so we took the house, the first house that we'd owned. And so I took a lot of pride in actually taking care of the place. Flower beds, edging the sidewalk, same thing I do now, really. Pruning plants and things like that. And there was an older white lady who lived down the street from us, and she would walk by sometimes while I was there. And I'd speak to her, good morning, ma'am. Well, she just ignored me, which was the way things were done at that time. Okay. And then one spring, all of a sudden, a plant just sprung up in my flower bed. And some of you might know this plant. It had no leaves. The stalk sprung straight up, and up top, a flower opened. I've just learned that's called a naked lady. Okay, so this lady walked by and she saw the plant and she stopped. She said, "Boy, what kind of plant is that?" "Ma'am, I don't know." "Well, where'd it come from?" I said, "It just grew." "Well, I've been here all these years, and I've never seen it." I said, "Ma'am, I really don't know." And so she started to walk away and she said, you take real good care of this place. Very, very good player. She said, when I come back by, she was going shopping about a block and a half away. When I come back by, I want you to follow me home. I'll give you some plants. Now, her yard had any kind of a plant you can imagine. I mean, I'd pass by and I just drool all the plants she had. So when she said when she comes back by, she would give me a plant, I was going to be waiting. If she shopped for 6 hours, I was going to be waiting. 12 hours, I was getting plants. So she came back by and I followed her home and she gave me plants, and then I took them, I put them in the yard. She gave me a bedding plant. She gave me bushes, anything at all that I could use to around the house right there. And so this is how she and I became friends, communicating friends. And at times when she would come by, if I wasn't there in the yard, she'd just leave a plant on the porch. And when I saw her next time, I'd thank her for it. But anyhow, that's how she and I in Oklahoma rigidly segregated as she and I started talking. So I realized then that plants can be a gateway to communications. So can music, but plants in this particular case right here. Okay, so at age 18, I joined the Air Force. No applause, please, no applause. And in 1959, I was in Washington, D.C. I had one stripe. And this older sergeant, he had 4 stripes. And he would come around because he had to and check on me. And he determined that, if you see right there, I was too quiet, too soft-spoken. I didn't cuss. I didn't drink hard liquor. I didn't smoke. And I didn't even drink coffee, according to him. There's no way in the world can you make it in the Air Force because you didn't do these things. Okay. Now, keep in mind, at that time, I had 1 stripe. He had 4 stripes. I'm going to get ahead of myself somewhat here, right? Okay. In 1966, I saw this same sergeant again. By that time, I had 4 stripes, and he still had 4 stripes. Okay. Okay. The military, the Air Force, especially police, was a very, very small family. So I saw him 10 years later again. By that time, I had 5 stripes. He still had 4 stripes, And I was thinking what he had told me. But had he seen me, like I said, 6 months after that particular time, I would have had 6 stripes, and most likely he still would have had 4 stripes. So I'm not bragging. I'm just stating a fact. It's stating a fact. Okay, right. But I left there, and I went to. Okay. That's Zane. What I want to advise is that listen to all the advice. I listened to this sergeant. You could not make it in the military. I listened to what he said, but I didn't act upon what he said. When he told me that, no way was I thinking about staying in the military. I wanted to get my time in and get out. But then I ended up staying. But I say, listen. I listened to what he said, but I didn't follow his advice. But I ended up from there going to Turkey, the country of Turkey, for 18 months. A town, 200,000 people. And that's when I developed an interest in historical things. So quite often I was downtown, and I saw some medieval scenes there that you probably don't want to hear about. I saw justice handed out by hanging people on a bridge. This is, okay. I saw a person with a collar around his neck being led by a chain of an African slave. And that kind of shocked me also. I think one of the most interesting things I saw. In order to come from the north into the town itself, you had to cross this bridge. That's where most of the activities seemed to be. They would herd sheep into the town across the bridge, cattle, you know. And this one time I was there waiting for the shuttle bus back to the base. And I noticed this guy, circus man, and his wife walking on the bridge coming toward the town. And they were walking side by side, and they had a donkey that was heavily laden with something on his back. They got to a certain position on the bridge, and they stopped. The man took that weight from the donkey, put it on his wife's back. He mounted the donkey, and he rode in. I'm serious. I looked at, are you joking? You know, and so now he's on the donkey riding, and she's behind him with that heavy load on her back following him into town. I mean, I saw scenes like that, but I also toured some castle ruins and some old town ruins because I was interested in things like that. Can anyone here remember a YouTube incident that happened back in the 60s? Okay, you're dating yourself, whoever you are. You're dating yourself. Okay, I was at the base that plane took off from. I happened to be there, right? But while I was in Turkey, I honed my basketball skills. And this picture here shows my police unit. We won the base basketball championship in 1959. A little guy in the center right there, that's me. Okay, all right. And because we'd won that, I was selected to join the base team. And the next picture to the right is where we were going to Greece for a basketball tournament. And the young guy there in the center, that's me. And if you look closer, you can see that that person only has one stripe. Only one stripe, right? Everyone else has 2 stripes, 3 stripes, 4 stripes, even 5 stripes. So that meant I was the youngest person on the team. Okay. But while I was there, I realized I did not care at all for the Air Force. So my intent was to get out. Okay. But I had people that I worked with, they don't judge the Air Force by what you see here in Turkey. Stick around. And they encouraged me to stay, and I in turn volunteered for Japan. And that's where my life changed. Well, my first assignment in Japan, in Tokyo, was 1961 through 65. And we did primarily law enforcement duties where we had to cover incidents and accidents throughout the Tokyo metropolitan area. But we also, because we were young, we had to be indoctrinated on how to drive in Tokyo. And we did need indoctrination. We really did. Okay. But the driving instructor, who's Japanese, he showed us how to get from base 1 to base 2 to base 3. He took us to various tourist sites, to shrines, to parks. But he encouraged us, and I took him up on his word. He encouraged us to get out and look around and sightsee Japan. You know, and so I did that. And so you notice right now I haven't said a thing about bonsai, about trees, right? Okay. But anyhow, this one particular night, I was with some friends, a night in Tokyo. We were going from bar to bar, from what we call watering hole to watering hole. And we passed by this storefront window. And that storefront window was a tree in a pot. And I looked at that. I'd already been drinking. My head was somewhat fuzzy. And I stopped and I looked at that. I said, what in the world? What have, I couldn't imagine what they had done. And so I'm here trying to figure out what they were doing. I'm thinking, okay, this is Japan, one of the most exotic places in the world. I figured they had some secrets they didn't know that they weren't sharing with the world. Well, my friends, they realized that I was not keeping up. And they turned around. Johnson, what are you doing? I'm looking at a plant. And in very, very graphic GI terms, they told me, you better get up here. They said it in a GI way. Okay, I will not repeat what they said. But I became more interested in parks and shrines than I did in trees at that time. And so I go to a lot of parks, a lot of shrines, and other entertainment districts. And because I was a young policeman, I had to learn how to talk to people. I learned how to talk to people, with people, and at people. Because you cannot address everyone the same way, especially when you are a youngster just coming up. And there are people well beyond your age, experience, and rank. So I had to learn to talk different ways to different people. While I was there, I acquired some military awards. The first one, Airman of the Month for our police unit, I won that 2 or 3 times this year. And for those who don't know, if you're in the Army, that would be Soldier of the Month. Navy would be Sailor of the Month. Marine would be Marine of the Month. And we were Airmen, and so I was Airman of the Month. I also won Airman of the Year for our police unit. And then that allowed me to compete for Airman of the Year for the entire command, which I won. And the command encompassed more than 5,000 military people, American civilians, and Japanese nationals, employees that worked for us. In addition, we had a lot of military wives and children that were dependents of people there. But anyhow, that was one of the greatest honors that I had at that time. Some Japanese companies about that time had formed what they call USO Honor Day. And it's still going on now. Now it's called U.S. Japan Area Office, and where they would honor people. But anyhow, companies, big companies, Sony, Mitsubishi, Japan Airlines, Nissan, Honda, large companies sponsored this. And because of what I had done in winning the Command Airman of the Year, I was chosen to represent the command itself. And what you can see right here, outstanding individuals from U.S. and Japanese service branches. At that time, it was just U.S. branches, okay? And so I was chosen, like I said, to represent the Kanto Base Command. My host, our host, I'll explain that in a second, was the Tokyo Mainichi Daily Newspaper, which was the largest English language newspaper in Japan. And so they would have us stand up at this particular ceremony, and they would introduce us and explain why we were chosen to represent our various commands. Okay. My host, like I said, 2 journalists from the Tokyo Mainichi News. And so we were introduced to them, and they took us first to a Kobe steak dinner, upscale restaurant. You can understand food, I know. All right. And so we had a real nice steak dinner. And from there, we went to this all-female dance troupe, where we are right here. These are some of the girls that actually performed. And the picture to the right, that's that young, handsome guy you see right there. Believe it or not, that's me. And I was much younger, right? And the person right next to me, his name, I think, was Kichamura. He was one of the journalists that was our host. And these are some pictures of some of the skits that this all-female troupe did. A little bit of everything. Okay, at that time, well, another acknowledgement I got was from the local police chief, because I was instrumental in identifying and apprehended a military person that had caused a very, very serious accident. The person that he hit almost died. And so the chief there recognized me and the interpreters you saw there, and the 2 other GIs who did that. So in my first assignment in Japan, it was 4 years, I went to many gardens, shrines, tourist areas, entertainment areas. I was able also to attend the 1964 Summer Olympics. That was the first time they'd had the Olympics in the Far East, is in Japan. Now, how I won that is that the Japanese government allotted a block of tickets to the American security forces for all the events they had there. We had to put our name in for a lottery, and then if your name was chosen, you would get the ticket after you paid for it, naturally, right? And so I put in for 7 tickets. I won 7 tickets. And I had field, track and field, finals in basketball, final in boxing. By the way, Joe Frazier was boxing that year. That shows how far I go back. Okay, right, yeah. And that's also, 64 was the year that I married. Okay, when I left there, I went to Travis for 1.5 years. There I made my 4th stripe. From there to Vietnam, 13 months. And there I was awarded the Bronze Star, which is, as you see there, the 4th highest combat medal that can be awarded. And it says there, recognized as military personnel who have distinguished themselves by heroic or meritorious achievements or service. And so I was lucky enough to get that. In my second assignment in Japan, they're going to stack up here after a while, right? Okay. Okay, so my second assignment in Japan was 4.5 years, and I still had not gotten involved in bonsai. So just kind of bear with me, right? But our police unit was the military police presence in Fukuoka, Japan, the city, and the prefecture is the largest prefecture in Japan itself. I had a position where I did police reports and analysis, where I had to coordinate with the military authorities and also some Japanese law enforcement authorities. And I was also in charge of passing registration. And this is where I really saw my first bonsai show. My wife and I, we were downtown shopping in a department store, and we wandered up to the roof of the building, and they had a bonsai show on display. And so my wife explained to me what was going on and everything like that. So I watched that, and then she started explaining that, okay, quite often when they have shows, they would have it on the roof of the buildings. And so I started looking for those. I learned at that time how to recognize and write the word bonsai in Japanese. If anytime I was out and about and I saw the word bonsai, I would wander in. It might be a shrine, it might be a church ground. You know, it might have been a park. And that's how I started really getting more involved into bonsai. Passing registration, I want to come back to that. Oh no, go too far. Oh, okay. I wanted to say this right here. Okay, I was in charge of passing registration. It's a story. Okay. It might offend some people. I hope not. Right. But working for me at that time was this young guy named Ikuta, Hawaiian American. I had 2 Japanese nationals, Susie, who'd been working with us for about 15 years, Toshi only about 2 years. And at the counter, when I went to check on them, was a Caucasian lady. She's been serviced. And so I went down to check, and I walked behind the counter. The door was open. I walked in. Ikuta, the Hawaiian, he had his back to the door. He didn't see me walk in. Susie, she had her back to me because she was doing something to help the lady at the counter. Toshi acknowledged him with a smile and a bow. And I heard this conversation. Show me yours, Ikuta. This is Susie. And Ikuta said, no. Show me yours, Ikuta. He said, no. I'm looking, listening, right? Come on, Ikuta, I showed you mine. Now show me yours. You know, innocently I asked, what are you guys talking about? Susie, right away, she turned around and she said, Sergeant Johnson, you have a very, very dirty mind. I said, dirty mind? What are you talking about? She said, you know what you're thinking. I said, oh, Susie, you know what you are thinking. I just want to know what's going on. And Toshi said, it was a strange conversation. And the lady at the counter said, yeah, I was wondering what they were talking about too. You know, well, okay, let me tell you what it was. We had recently received a Polaroid camera, photo booth that gave instant pictures. We had to mix the colors together in order to get a true picture. So when Ikuta and Susie had done that, Ikuta took a test picture of Susie, and she in turn took a text picture of him. And so I showed you mine, now show me yours. That's what they were talking about. Okay. But then now the 5 of us, we just laughed about the whole thing, the lady at the counter and the 4 of us, you know. And then I started realizing something, you know, I said, wait a minute. We have 2 Japanese national, we have a Hawaiian American, we have I would say a middle country white lady at the counter, have me from the ghetto. We all understood this little boy, little girl game. You show me yours, I show you mine. And I realized then that we're more alike as humans than we are different. Okay. But then I just wanted to share that with you. Okay. While I was there, I had a chance to attend the World's Fair in 1970. One of the places I went to was the Nagasaki Peace Shrine, which was ground zero for the bombing of August 6th of 1945. And there's an incident that happened there called the Pueblo Crisis, whereas the North Koreans had seized one of our spy boats and took it to North Korea, and that really almost caused an international incident. But what I'm saying is that we're directly across the Sea of Japan from Korea. And so the buildup of American forces was around the base that I was at that time. I left there and I went to Castle Air Force Base in Merced. I was there for 2 years and had a few positions and nothing really spectacular. That's when I made my 5th stripe. And then I go back to my 3rd assignment in Japan. And some people are drooling now, I know. But anyhow, I was there 74 to 78. And believe it or not, I met this sergeant a 3rd time. A 3rd time. Now I have 5 stripes. He still has only 4. Right. And I could tell he's embarrassed. But like I said, in 17 years, he had not progressed at all. But I mentioned before, had he seen me 6 months after I saw him there, I would have had 6 stripes, and he still would have had 4 most likely. But in having 6 stripes, I was in command of 50 to 60 military police and Japanese security guards. I had to supervise them, inspect them, and assign them to their posts, whatever the case might be. And this one time, I'd gone down to our police headquarters to get my briefing materials, and on the police desk was this beautifully colorful Satsuki azalea plant. And I've never seen anything, I don't recall seeing anything like that in my life. I mean, solid colors, speckled colors on the flowers, you know, whatever you might say. But I literally came apart and I asked the desk sergeant, military desk sergeant, whose plant is that? I don't know. You know, he didn't know. I asked the Japanese desk sergeant, he didn't know. I said, somebody has to know. You know, I got upset. I wanted to find that someone has to know who owns this plant. In the back was our interpreter translator. His name was Otani. I said, Mr. Otani, I said, who owns this plant? He came up and he wanted to explain to me about the plant. So just tell me who owns it. He kept trying to explain. I said, Mr. Otani, just tell me who owns the plant. He said, Sergeant Johnson, if you calm down, I'll tell you. Because I was excited, you know, all hyper. But he told me that the plant was owned by a Japanese security guard who was working for me that particular day. So I got my materials together and I rushed down to my briefing area. And I walked up to this person, Japanese National Security Guard, and I told him, I said, I want to see you after guard mount, after briefing. And I walked away. And I thought, what have I done? I turned around and he was literally shaking. You know, top sergeant, I want to talk to you later. What he heard, right? And he was shaking. Oh no. I walked back to him, put my arms around his shoulder, and I knew his name. I said, no problem. You're not in trouble. I only want to talk to you about bonsai. Only about bonsai. With my arms around his shoulder, I could feel the tension go out of his body. He relaxed and his face stopped contorting, you know, so he wasn't in trouble. Well, I rushed through my briefing. And as soon as I could, I went out to the security post he was working at. And we talked, I have no idea how long. I was in charge, I could say as long as I wanted to, about bonsai. And he in turn invited me to his house to see his bonsai collection. And he told me how to get there by train. I did that. He met me at the train station. And we walked to his house. And I walked there and he had Satsuki. I didn't know what they were. All I knew was azalea at that time, right? Plus he had other plants. And I don't know how long I stayed at his house. Probably too long. Too long. But anyhow, he ended up giving me 2 plants, bonsai, in bonsai pots, 1 pine tree and 1 maple. So I took those 2 plants home, I put them on my patio, and I think I worried those 2 plants to death. Picking them up, touching them, looking at them, you know, I was just excited. But anyhow, then I started going to the library reading about bonsai. About 4 or 5 months later, I was looking at our base bulletin, which is put out by the base commander, official information, but in the back, they also had an unofficial section where you can put something that you might want to sell or some unofficial meeting you were having. But I noticed that first time I noticed this, that there were free bonsai classes being offered at the service club. I've been there 2 years at least. I've never noticed that. So anyhow, I rushed across. I signed up for the classes, and I started taking classes. And I attended. He taught classes twice a year. So I attended the September session, the March session, another September session in 1978, another spring session. And I want to share with you some pictures of this particular person's yard and explain what this is. This right here is an old style Japanese house that he lived in with his wife and children. He had added this structure right here. Okay. If you look closer, you can see bonsai on top of the building. Okay. This is the entrance. As you can see, this guy got off his bicycle. He's walking around looking at the access points. But look at these limbs that this guy had used to form a fence. Okay. This is the hut right here is where he had his fish pond filters. And this is the hut going around the corner. And this also, look how uniform those limbs are for the fence itself. And it led all the way down to a workshop. And there he had what appeared to be plywood siding on his workshop. Okay. And you notice also he has what appears to be branches framing his windows. And I was wondering, how did he find anything so uniform? Okay. He didn't find it. He made it. Okay. And this right here, it's a birch log that he had made. Birch, okay? And he did what we call giboku. He would take a beer bottle, wrap it with chicken wire, roughly put cement around it. Once it hardened, he would get mortar and put that on, and with cement cover, he would carve logs. That's a log right there. That's a log right there. Let's look a little bit closer here. He has logs around his fish filter, logs on his bridge, stands or logs, but he made all these things from what he called giboku. Okay. And that's how he's able to get everything so uniform. More pictures of his yard. This right here, where he's going from that new structure of his house, a walkway going over to the top of his workshop, which is right here. And you see that bonsai lined up there. There was bonsai here, bonsai everywhere. And this is more of a bird's eye view of his place. This right here is the top of his workshop. Trees, here trees. He had 3 fish ponds. It's the larger one here with had the koi. A few more pictures. Okay. You can see here, he's made a stand of giboku. The stand also is a support for this landing coming down to another area, a pond. And this is also, you can see here the landing from the other place. Work will go down to the top of his workshop. And this right here would go down to the ground level. So he had bonsai on 3 different levels. And this was my introduction to actually getting involved in bonsai. The good part about his classes, the last session, he'd invite us out to his house. And oh, by the way, he was an engineer that worked on the base. So he had skills. He had skills, right? But he'd invite us the last day to his house, and we go there. Okay, this is basement right here. And you can see he has a well-stocked bar. And so, and we participate in some libations. This is me, and I'm looking at the glass, probably admiring the fact that it tasted so good. And it was free. It was free. But he pointed out also, when he first started Giboku, making those concrete or cement things, this is the first one that he'd done. And you can see how crude that is compared to what he eventually evolved into. Okay, while I was there, at the time I had a chance to go to the SeaWorld exposition in Okinawa. And then I left there and I was going to Travis. And during I was going to Travis, I contacted Bonsai Clubs International to ask them about a club close to Fairfield, which is where Travis Air Force Base is. And they directed me to what was at that time the Mill Valley Bonsai Club. It's closed now, and so when I returned, as soon as I could, I went there to Mill Valley and I joined the club. And I attended monthly meetings whenever I could. In 1980, we moved to Sacramento, but I continued to go to the Mill Valley shows and to their meetings because I didn't know anything about a club here in Sacramento. But about 1984, 85, I was at the Nico Nursery, which is close to where the Green Acres Nursery is right now. I met this person. All I can recall is his name is Guy. His name I cannot recall. But he was at the bonsai area in this particular nursery looking at the bonsai. And we started talking, and he wanted to see my bonsai, paltry as it was. I took him there and I went to see his. But he invited me to come to a American Bonsai meeting, and I did. Okay. And I immediately joined the club. But Clarence was president of the club at that time. Okay. 84, 85, something like that. He's forgotten. Yeah, right now. But he was president of the club. But I can recall at one meeting at the turn of the year, we were discussing the upcoming spring show. And they were asking for volunteers, for show preparation also to kind of help tend to the show, set it up. And I showed up for a show prep, and George Brown, which some of you might have heard of, might know, he greeted me. He's very surprised. What are you doing here? I came to help out. To help out? Yeah. He told everyone, hey, this guy's here to help, And okay, who I saw there were the pillars at that time of the club. George and Doris Brown, Walt Brainerd, Clarence Smith, Doug Ruffner, Harry Jan, Betty Pitts, Dan Buckley, and some others. They were the ones that did everything for the club. And very few other people got involved. But anyhow, Sit Up was an all-day event on Friday before the show. We started at 9 o'clock in the morning. And we had to lift heavy metal tables. We had heavy wooden frames, burlap for the skirts of the tables, plastic for the backdrops, paper for the tabletops. It was, with those number of people, those are the only ones that were there, we would have to break for lunch and come back and finish setting up. That's how long it took with the people that we had and the things that we had to do. But anyhow, so I endured all of that, and I stayed around for the show itself. And so somewhere during the show, George Brown invited me to attend a workshop in Rockland at Doug Ruffman's house. And when I got there, who did I see? That same group of people that were doing everything for the club. Okay. And they actually accepted me into their group because I was a worker. And so George invited me to stop by his house in Carmichael, and he gave me 30 1-gallon contorted elm trees. That more than tripled my collection, more than tripled, right? Like I said, but thereafter, anytime they did something as a group of friends and club members, I was invited to that. I attended everything I could. This is the result of those 30 trees that George gave me. I've had this on display at shows quite often. Then I started attending classes that were taught by Earl Fong. Some of you might remember him. And he was teaching for the Park and Recreational District of Sacramento. And after I attended 4 or 5 sessions, he asked me to help him out because I was more advanced than the students he had coming in. So we did that for a while. Now, Earl had a degree in art. He's a very accomplished artist, graphic artist. He could draw. But he invited me to help him out, and I did that. And one year, he and his mother went to China for vacation. He asked me, would I teach the fall class? Okay. I decided I'd do that. He came back, and he taught the spring class, another fall class together. We did that. And then the following year, he asked me if I wanted to take over teaching the spring class, the fall class. Okay. Then about 2 years later, he told me, if you want to, you can have the entire program. And so I took that over, and I taught for about 10 years with the Sacramento Park and Recreational District. But Earl and I became friends, and we attended shows as far north as Redding, as far south as Fresno, and Earl did something that I really enjoyed. He would take a plant, and he'd actually describe to me the plant in a way that it could possibly be improved. He said, he wouldn't touch the plant. He'd say, if they kind of lift this up or maybe move this or tilt it, and this is how I learned how to look at plants and maybe how to style plants, right? And well, by him doing that. And that's why he asked me to do that, and I would do that, right? And so what I'm saying is I'm putting a challenge out to the more established members. take the time to meet and greet some of our new members and walk around the show and point out plants with them. They need help. They're trying to learn. A little one-on-one time with them will make them more interested in the club and get them a lot more valuable in getting doing their bonsai. I'm going to tilt a little bit here and go to history. And what I'm going to tell you now is on the History Channel. You can find it on YouTube. You can Google it. There are numerous books, numerous articles and things like that. But the history I want to talk about is my hometown, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And a lot of people don't know this. But in 1921, there was a major race riot in Tulsa where some rogue white Tulsa citizens literally devastated, destroyed a 32 square block area of the Black community. I only had two pictures I'm going to show you. And that's sort of pictures that were taken at that time. Now, the Tulsa Tribune, the day after the riots were over, cleared by the troops, the Oklahoma National Guard was brought in to quell the whole situation. And they, in turn, joined in with some of the rogue citizens there, and they joined in the mayhem, and they also destroyed quite a few things. But look what they're saying right here. As a result, there were 9 whites killed and 68 Negroes. That's what the newspaper reported at that time. Okay, that's what 77 people. Okay, we moved to Tulsa 24 years after that atrocity, and it wasn't talked about at all. Matter of fact, you might hear a little whispering every once in a while in the Black community about it, but the white community had completely ignored that. And later, 75 years later, the Oklahoma governor created the Oklahoma Commission to study the race riot, Tulsa race riot of 1921. And the final report was given to him in 2001. As a result of what they found in that report, they renamed it from the Tulsa race riot to the Tulsa race massacre, because they found that more than 300 people have been killed. And Oklahoma University archaeologists, they were tasked with finding graves, and they're still looking for graves, right? And so right now, like I said, the count is up to about 300 people that were killed during that time. Once again, the Tulsa race riot, you can Google it. It's on History Channels, on YouTube. If you're interested, the information is there. Okay, let me get back to my involvement in bonsai. Okay. So I have attended numerous workshops, as many as I could, as many club shows as I can, and read books. I have too many books. And I was helped along with bonsai by some of the exalted club members I mentioned before, because they would single me out and help me with my bonsai. Now, my plant choices. Okay, maples was my #1 choice when I first got involved in bonsai. And I got my area set up, and where I had on the east side of my house, shaded from the afternoon west sun, I had a 2-inch lath, and I started buying exotic maples, 4-inch liners, 6-inch pots, something a little bit more expensive than I really should have been buying. Okay. Everything died. All of my maples died. Matter of fact, I was so poor taking care of plants, I think even the few rocks I had, I think they died too. Right? Yeah. Anyhow, so I just backed off, and I took a few classes from American River on horticulture, and I became more involved and learned how to take care of plants. And now, very seldom do I kill anything. And I say kill. I just say very seldom those things that they kill. Okay. But my favorite now is ginkgo, and I sort of specialize in deciduous plants. And I like the cascade style, and also the multiple tree plantings, 3 trees, 5 trees, 7, forest settings, things like that. I do not care for conifers, as most people know, right? Right. With the exception of cedar. I love the cedars, but the junipers, I don't care for those. The pines, I don't care for. But that's my choice. And everyone knows I had to say something about weeds, right, Paul? Right. Paul teases me because I see a weed and I'll pluck it. okay? And I'm talking about weeds in my bonsai, in my potted plants, not in my flower beds, not in my lawn. Matter of fact, my neighbors probably think that I'm propagating weeds. But but I don't care for weeds. So how do you kill weeds? How do you eradicate weeds? You don't. You don't. All we can do is control them. Any pest that we know of, all we can do is control. We can't really eradicate because it'll come back in some kind of a way. But my advice to you, when you see a weed, as soon as it peeps up, pluck it out right then and right there. Give it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it'll spread. Then you have to take some dedicated time to remove the weeds from your bonsai. As soon as it pops up, take it out. A few advice, little tips. Okay, get involved in our club activities. It's for the newer people especially. We have beginner workshop, meeting shows, club opportunities, teaching opportunity. Roger has an opportunity. I think Doc Ward has one that they're teaching new members. Get involved in those. Attend not only our club events, but other club events also. It doesn't cost you anything at all to go to another club meeting or club show. But you learn something from everybody. And do not limit yourself to information from just one source, one individual. And some people might know who I'm talking about when I say this. But if a person tells you, I will teach you everything you need to know about bonsai, listen, but don't necessarily act upon everything that person tells you. Because knowledge is not all inclusive. No one knows everything about any topic. They could know some things, and usually they can teach you the extent of their knowledge, but they wouldn't know everything. Okay? And listen, like I said, listen and learn. But you don't have to act or react to everything that you learn. More advice for people just getting involved. Okay, for the shows, prep the plants before the show. It's almost impossible to get a tree ready for a show 1 or 2 days before the show. That should start 2 weeks before, put it on the plant maybe a month before. But prep it. Make sure it's weeded, pruned, then the foliage out, clean the pot, make it look good because that's a show that we're putting on to impress other club members and the general public. So prep. Also, if you're trying to sell something, same thing, prep that particular plant. Weed it. I have seen plants come in for sale. A branch might be 1.5 feet, 2 feet from the pot itself, not a part of the overall composition. All you have to do is snip that off, and then you have something that's pretty well contained. But prepare whatever you're doing, okay? And also, try different kinds of plants, right? New folks try all different kinds until you find one that you think you like, and then if you want to, you can put more time into that. And you can become maybe the go-to person for that particular plant, like for pine. Renee loves pines. So to me, she's a go-to person on pines. You guys have made me the go-to person on Satsuki. Why? Probably because I haven't killed as many as you have. But anyhow, what I'm saying is that, find something that you like and pursue that. This is what my azalea could look like had we not had this atrocious weather these last 2 summers. I lost, quote unquote, killed branches and trees. But that's what it has looked like in the past. Okay, but this is a plant that I had for many years. It was created in 1992 at a bonsai, Golden State Bonsai Convention. And in about 2003, it was on display at the State Fair. And the shelving that the State Fair had created, had put there, gave away, and this tree fell and it cracked it all up to the extent where it never recovered. TikTok, Pinterest, or something like that, I have come across this tree. Matter of fact, wait a minute. Kimberly? Where's Kimberly? Okay. Kimberly called me up once and she said that she just saw one of the most beautiful trees she'd ever seen. And she sent me a picture of it. And there was this tree after I'd lost it. And I told her, that was my tree. And I said, I know it was mine because look at that sand that it's on right there. Very crude, But anyhow, it's still floating around. and other people on the media, they've claimed this is their tree. Well, the tree's no longer alive. But that was my pride and joy for quite a few years. So let me recap. So my life journey included 22 years of military service, 24 years as a letter carrier, and that encompassed about 45 years as a part of my bonsai journey. That makes me what, 67, 68, something like that, right? Okay, but I looked right here and I thought, how can I end this? And I said, okay, I'm still quiet. I'm still soft-spoken. I don't cuss very much. I went through a binge of drinking hard liquor. I don't do that anymore. I never did smoke, and I never even drank coffee. So I asked myself, and I'll ask you also, have I changed very much? Okay, so I'll go forward and I'll listen to questions. Anyone have a question they want to ask? Any questions? Yeah, Lex. Okay, that's a very good question. Very, very good question. Oh yeah, he wants to know if the place I went to for bonsai class, the instructor, his house, I would compare it to what we have right now. That's a very good question. Very good question. Okay, any other questions? I said I would listen to questions. I didn't say I would answer them. Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, because of the sheer number of plants that he had, I think you saw he had them everywhere, right? I think he was well in advance of what most of us are, well in advance. Now, I have no idea how he did all that by himself, but he did, yeah. But the collections I saw, they had some really, in traveling around, they had some real nice trees, as you know by looking at books that we can see on the media and it's sale and everything like that, yeah. But as far as he was concerned, I think he's well ahead of where I am now, where most of us are now. Okay, any other questions? If she's asking about the soils that we use, Kanuma and Akadama. At that time, no. We here were not introduced to Kanuma until Mr. Nakayama and Mr. Gondo, Watsuki experts, had come and started teaching classes at El Dorado Bonsai. That's when we got involved in Kanuma. Akadama, I can't recall when we got involved, but no, I was not introduced to those soils while in Japan. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, good. Well, thanks so much. I can relax now, let it all hang out. Thanks you so much.
That was excellent. There was a lot I didn't know about you. 6 stripes, 10, Tim. So, that was wonderful. There's a few other tidbits that he didn't share as far as his bonsai experience as well that I'd like to share. As I mentioned, he's been on the board for decades at every position except treasurer and several positions, multiple. He's been the program chairperson for the show. He was our newsletter editor. Years ago, we used to do the state fair, which I was not involved at the time. I think that was a 3-week commitment where we put on a show basically at the state fair. And I don't know how many years that occurred, but Tim was in charge of that and also in charge of our spring show. And he chaired the annual bus trip for 10 to 15 years. He chaired the annual home tour for 10 to 15 years. He did the club's 50-year anniversary where all the clubs in town were invited to participate with bonsai display. He organized a contest for naming the club newsletter, and that's how the bent twig came, which that was one of Tim's entries. Golden State Bonsai Federation, for those of you that don't know, is the state organization. We often call it GSBF. He was a district trustee at the time. There were 13 districts, I think, in all of California, and he was representative of that. He was on the membership chairperson, calendar of events manager, convention, donation, benefit drawing committees, and he worked at the annual convention for many, many years. I need you back, Tim. He has a certification in bonsai basic instruction He was honored by GSBF in 2006 and again in 2012 for contributions and for continued involvement in the statewide bonsai community. He mentioned that he taught classes from 1985 until 1991. And he did that with Earl Fong. And then he later taught classes on his own from 1991 to 2002. And he is presently an active member of 3 out of the 4 local Sacramento clubs: American Bonsai Association Sacramento, Bonsai Saikukai, and Satsuki, and I can never say it right, Aiko Kai. And he's been a master gardener since 2007. So he knows a lot and he's done a lot, bottom line. With that, we would like to share with you a short presentation of some photos. And bear with me while I get that queued up.
Okay.
So I remember meeting Tim the first time I came to an American bonsai workshop, and it was for beginners. It was 1989, and you've been in the club already for how many years,
About
Tim?
5 years roughly.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the things that you did was that you invited me to your class that you were teaching at Bell Coolidge. You did that for quite a number of years too.
I did. Okay. Now, my memory states that Deb Middleton had attended one of my classes, and she in turn brought you to the class.
That isn't actually the way it went. I went with her the first time she went, but she's the one who got us there.
Okay.
But yeah, Dib Middleton got invited by a coworker. She had a new job, and he invited her to come to American Bonsai for the beginner workshop. And we came, and you were the guy that came over and started helping us with our tree. We got the tree, the wire, the pot, the styling, your advice on how to take care of it, all for $25. And I don't think that the fees have changed that much in all these years. A little loophole in the inflation.
Okay, right. Okay, right. Okay, at that time, the club would provide the pot, like she said, the plant, the instruction, everything, the wire, everything for a $25 fee. So a student would actually attend a workshop and leave with a bonsai, and naturally in a pot already pruned and semi-styled and things like that.
Yep, that's right.
Right.
But out of that, you invited both Deb and I to attend your workshops that you were doing for the city of Sacramento at Bill Coolidge.
Right, okay.
And you did that for quite a while. How long was that?
Was that with Earl at the time?
The first one we went to was with Earl.
Okay.
And you were co-teaching. And then after the next semester, when it was the fall session, you taught the whole thing. Okay. We went to a spring session where Earl was teaching.
and I was a co.
And you were co-teaching.
Okay, right, yeah, okay. Okay, so I got my start here really with Earl, because I started with his classes, and he in turn asked me to just come help him out. And after a period of time, he and his mother went to China for a fall trip, if I'm not mistaken. And he asked me would I take over the class at that time, which I did. So the next spring, he taught twice a year, spring and fall. So the next year he came back, he did the spring session. And he asked me would I do the fall session. And I said, well, yeah, I'll try, you know. And then after that, a few years later, he said, Tim, he said, you know, I've been teaching for X number of years. Why don't you just take over the whole thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started teaching twice a year
Mm-hmm.
for the district itself.
Well, one of the things that I noticed that was different in when you took over was that you made an effort to make sure that all of us knew all of the clubs in Sacramento.
Okay, now what I tried to teach was that we had 4 independent clubs right here. And each student, if they wanted to stay in bonsai, attend each club's meeting. And then it's not the club, it's individuals in the club that we're concerned about, right? And so attend the individual club meetings, and then from that decide if you want to join that particular club or any other club, and join all 4 clubs if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried to stress, check out all 4 clubs without actually pinpointing in any one individual club.
One of the other things that was unique about your class was that you saw that you took us to different bonsai nurseries. In fact, we had a field trip where you took us to George Yamasaki's in Auburn,
Right.
where there was really some aged material, you know, depending on our pocketbook and whatever, we could afford to buy something that had some substance to it.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting.
Right. Well, I enjoyed going out. George Yamasaki had a nursery in Auburn. And I enjoyed going there because he'd been at this for quite a while. He had a lot of real nice material. I just wanted to share that with the people getting involved in bonsai. That's why I would take people out there. Not necessarily to show you. I wanted to go out myself. I always enjoyed going out there.
Uh-huh.
But he did have a lot of real nice things, aged things he'd been growing for a while. And so he always gave us good prices. And so people had a chance to actually buy. Now, one thing I did do, I don't know if you can recall, I always stressed the 5 basic styles that people should know, right? And I tried to implant that in everyone's mind. And so my attitude when we get there, have some idea about what you might be looking for, okay? Okay, I need something in my hands to talk, right? What we might be looking for. And I said, and so if you get there and you see a type tree you might want, and he had a lot of different plants of the same type tree. I said, you know, pick out maybe 2 or 3 that you might like, right? And then, you know, and I'll come by and then I'll tell you what I saw in each one of those individual trees. Then you make the selection as to which individual tree that you wanted. This way, I'm not picking your tree out, you're picking out the tree.
That's right.
And I tried to stress that, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. You also talked to us about what to look for in a tree. I remember you coaching us about having a chopstick possibly to to be able to check out the Navari.
No, yeah, always. The root structure is always important, especially the way they radiate around the base of the tree itself. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of things to learn, like I mentioned, and I would mention quite often, right? And I said, it's not a one-time that does everything type experience. I said, you've got to continuously stay at this. And some people did. Some did. Can you recall who was at the first class that you went to? Earl was teaching, I was a co-instructor.
Yes, that was the first class.
Can you recall anyone else who might be in the club now?
Well, what I recall is that there were some people who took your course, and that's where they started, and they really, bonsai became central in their lives. And some of them aren't in the club anymore, but the Fazios, for instance, Fred and Dolly, they built El Dorado Bonsai as a result of having taken classes from you. They went to Japan. They met masters who they brought back azalea, which is really your first love. They had specialized in azalea.
Right.
But there were a lot of people who joined at that time, Barb and Jill were students of yours, and they do the raffles every year for ABAS still. There were some other people in our class that have over the years either aged out or gone to something else, but Dorothy Place. So Tim, I later learned that it's nothing new to you to take a novice and help them get exposed to the world that they've just stepped into. This was something that you started in the military, where you met GIs who were unfamiliar with Japan and were kind of determined to just stay on the base and not see what Japan had to offer. And that same thing where you took them out and showed them the world and exposed them to that was the kind of thing that you did with me and a few others with Bonsai. It was through you that I first went to any other club show that was outside of Sacramento, to conventions, all of those things. And really through that, met people that where it ended up, both of us took some jobs for GSBF, Golden State Bonsai Federation, as a result. So we weren't just local yo-hos anymore.
I got involved in GSBS because you brought me into it. You recruited me, Kathleen.
Is that right?
Yeah. Kathleen's always been a good recruiter, as most of you know, right? But she would go out and, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? You know, and so through her recruitment, I tried a little bit different things here and there. Yeah. Okay, but as far as in the military, as you progress through the ranks, from a sergeant all the way up, it's up to you to mentor the younger people. And so that was a part of my military training. Just find someone that needed assistance, which most guys just starting out, they don't know much about the military. Like I did not know anything, but I was always able to listen and try to learn from other people.
Well, not only did you do it for our club in terms of just introducing people to different styles of trees, and how to care for them, you also encouraged people to take positions on the board. You served as president for a couple of times. You were the editor of the newsletter, and then you did the bus trip for 10 or 15 years.
I'm not too sure how long that was, but everything was enjoyable. I was learning also, you know, and the idea to be to go out and search around and find things that the club itself can do. I really appreciated doing that. You know, I didn't see it as being a real task. It's just something that I enjoy doing.
I know that one of the things that you did was that when you learned a job and knew how to do it well, you documented it. And so then there was something that you could pass on to the other people who followed and were able to fill those positions. That they weren't just left on their own to reinvent the wheel.
Right, that's military training also. Documentation, you know. So once you're gone, someone will probably use what you've done and maybe grow from that. And so that's part of the military training also.
Well, it's been something that's really helped mature this organization. And, you know, I'm proud of you for that. You know, not a lot of clubs have that kind of history.
Well,
you know, that knowledge isn't passed on so well.
Well, like I said, what I've done in Bonsai, I've enjoyed. The club itself, I've enjoyed. As you can tell, I get involved in as many activities as I can. And that's just a part of the way I feel of actually growing and also giving back to the organization itself.
Well, I'm Carmen Scott. So Dodie asked me if I'd want to say something about this, and I said, yeah, I'd love to talk to Tim. He's a lot of fun to talk to, even if he would rather I didn't. So what I remember from Tim, before I joined the club, and I'd been doing bonsai a long time, and I would come down to Sacramento with Renee, and we'd come to the show. And there you would be, and Renee goes, oh, he's here every time, and he comes up to me every time. And so we chat with you for a while, and you would always, why haven't you joined the club yet?
Oh, yeah.
So you were quite the...
Okay.
Yeah.
You're removing flowers. I might show this.
I need
I know.
I need to do something with my hands, and you've
why.
got scissors.
Yeah.
So I have to be careful what I do. Thank you. Okay.
No, don't prune. Don't prune.
So then when we finally did join the club, and I would mostly just come down for the shows,
Mhm.
and my job seemed to be your helper for one of your helpers. I'm sure you had many for the raffle at the show.
That was Barb and Jill.
Barb and
most
Jill
likely.
did it, but you were out there, and everyone you dragged me around, especially one of the conventions. Okay, we're gonna go around to
Yeah.
to the vendors.
All right, and encourage them to
Right.
donate something. Right?
Ye-
That was at the one of the conventions. Actually, I did 3 conventions,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was at the convention that you helped me at.
Yes.
And we'd go around to each vendor and ask them to donate something to the benefit raffle.
And
And so,
Tim had quite the strong arms. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
no. I just relied upon that generous moods. That's all.
It's
Some were
expected.
surprised, even though they've been told when they applied to be a vendor, we're going to ask for some kind of a donation. But still, they seem so, okay, but some were quite generous. I mean, gave a lot more than we really anticipated.
Yep.
But a lot of fun. A lot of fun, yeah.
So I just want to say it has been a lot of fun through the years, and even though I came in late in your whole bonsai career,
Right,
I
yeah.
enjoyed doing stuff with you thoroughly.
Okay, well, like I said, you came from Jefferson State,
Yes, I drove down a long way.
right from Reading, which is quite a distance.
Yeah.
And you made quite a few events. You're still making a
It's
lot of events.
seems to be getting worse. They're sucking me in, and you're partly to blame.
Okay, well, no.
You started this process.
Yeah, right, yeah. But
Okay.
you're right. We'd see each other at most of the shows. You and Renee,
Mm-hmm.
not either with Earl, most likely, and maybe with George Stewart, which
Yeah.
we both lost. We all lost, I guess I should say. Yeah. But that's when I think you're right. I was at almost every show.
Yeah,
that I
so
went to.
let's say congratulations, you deserve this. You earned it.
Okay, well, thank you, and thanks for your friendship
Thank you.
and your participation in bonsai in general.
That was fun to get a look at a few older pictures. So Renee, would you like to say a few words?
No, I thought it might be nice, if people have some things that they want to share about Tim, this would be a nice opportunity to do that. I know when I first moved to Sacramento, I was involved. I wasn't involved in bonsai, but I loved bonsai. Didn't have time because I was working full time, but I would go to all the bonsai shows, and every show I went to, there's Tim. And he'd come around and take me around and show me the trees and give me the, why don't you join the club routine every single time. This went on for years. I'd go to a show, Tim would be there. Why don't you join the club? Well, finally in 2005, I retired and joined the club about that time. And once I did, I realized how passionate Tim was about bonsai. I had no clue how passionate he was. And it was just kind of infectious, and how involved he was in the club. And it would just kind of, his passion and involvement just kind of, rubbed off onto everybody that was, worked with him. So I just wanted to thank Tim for being a mentor and a friend for all these years, and for helping me so much when I was president. Whenever I needed anything, Tim was always there to help me when I was president. And just want to say that the bonsai community here in Sacramento is totally indebted to his contributions. And I wanted to thank him very much. Thank you, Tim.
I joined the club around 1994, and I really enjoyed bonsai. I liked these little trees, and they were really nice. And one meeting, we had 3 beautiful junipers up on the stage, really nice, plush, beautiful junipers. And Tim came up and was going to make bonsai out of them. Well, how could you make bonsai out of such beautiful trees? What are you going to do? And he took these scissors, and you could just see the bonsai, the juniper flying in the air, and all of them, there was a great big dumpster, or what do you call it, big trash can, getting full. And what are you doing with these beautiful trees? And you should have seen what he did with these beautiful trees. I was so impressed. It was just wow. And yeah, Tim did it.
I just wanted to reiterate how impressed I am, Tim, to see how you have changed lives with your care and the things that you love, you want to share with others. It's just fantastic. And when I first took a class on bonsai at Exotic Plants many years ago, you were the teacher. And I was impressed with how kind you were with this one lady who brought in this whole box of bonsai, and she wanted your help with it. And you took one by one and just very gently said, you can't bring something back to life that's left. And before the class was over, you made sure that everyone had a list of every one of the bonsai clubs in Sacramento. And you also had a list of all the shows that were available coming up in the whole area, Rebs and everything. So thank you so much for expanding your world with all of us.
I'm that Clarence Smith that Tim mentioned earlier. And I've been in this club since 1972. And I saw Tim walk in one night to a meeting, and I was so happy to see him walk in that door because we didn't have many people of color. Well, let me change that a bit. We didn't have many Black people in this club at that time, but Tim has been a valued member of this club ever since I've known him. And I can call him having problems with a plant, and he's right there if I want him. Thank you, Tim.
So I just have two things to add. One is I was the recipient of your documenting the things that you've done. And thank you, because it helped me make our home tour a really special time. So thanks for that, because I wouldn't have had a clue what to do otherwise. But the second, and maybe even more important, I wasn't in bonsai, but I've always loved plants. And so I haunt nurseries. And I had found apparently in the phone book, Mariama's. So I went over to Mariama's, first getting very lost because I didn't have proper directions. And then I'm wandering around, and this man came up to me and started talking and telling me all about bonsai and Mariama's nursery and what to look for. It was Tim. And I think at the time you even invited me to come and see your plants. I didn't know what that meant. So, and you know, he's kind of a good looking guy, so I really didn't know what that meant. But Tim mentored Kathleen. And so when I was haunting the shows and sales, Kathleen came up to me and said, why don't you join our club? And much like Renee, I said, I'm working, I'm busy, I don't really have time, and I'm not a joiner. So Kathleen persisted by telling me about the upcoming home tour and the luncheon that would take place afterwards. So I ended up joining. So Tim, you've mentored people in so many ways. I did eventually get to see your home and your collection. And then you graciously offered me an azalea that you told me never blooms. It's got the tiniest leaves I've ever seen. And we spent maybe 3 or 4 hours with you showing me how to wire every single little branch on that tree. I still have it. It still hasn't bloomed. Thank you.
So the Bell Coolidge Earl Fong class, I was in that as well. That's when I started. I kept puttering around thinking I would do this and reading and destroying trees. And my wife said, you need to take a class. And then next week she came home with me signed up for that class. And so I'd go down there to do that. And then the one thing that Tim espouses is volunteer. Any of you guys that have been through my classes understand that that's a absolute request that I have of you also, that you come down here and join and participate. And you really get so much benefit from that, from the veterans around. And so that's one of the things that led me to Tim talking me into running for president way back then. And after I'd only been here 3 or 4 years at that time. And I thought, like, do I have enough experience to do that? Doesn't matter, just do it. So anyway, I did. And then the one last thing I'll say is, and one of the volunteers things I did was, he was the editor of the Bent Twig, but somebody had to, and I can't even remember, it was back 30 years, if you had to lick the stamp still then, or if you had to put the paste on addresses, but he got it together. And I don't think we stuffed envelopes. I think they were stapled or something, but I volunteered. So I followed his lead. I volunteered, went over to his house once a month, got the stack of the Bent Twig newsletters and came home and got them all ready, got them in the mail. And so then after that was the presidency. And then I get to think of Timm every single morning when I walk out into my backyard, and you guys don't have that advantage. But the first show I went to, I saw a kind of a wilted azalea, wisteria that I thought looked like it would be a decent bonsai. So I went to Timm and I said, Timm, is this worth this? And he goes, Roger, it was $65, and $65 30 years ago, that's a pretty good hunk of change. And he goes, Roger, the pots were $65. And the plant wasn't. It was already fading, and it faded the rest of the way. But now some of you guys may have seen it in the show 3 or 4 years ago, is a Chinese wisteria. So it's a pink wisteria in the pot. It sets right dead center when you walk out my backyard, and when it's in bloom or not. And that blue pot is what the wisteria is. So when I walk out, first thing I see is that blue pot. I go, Timm made me get that. So that's my stories about Timm. Thank you for everything you've done for me, Timm, over the years.
Just real quick, Kirk and I joined the club sometime in the 2000s, and I remember Timm invited us over to his house. He was just so friendly and welcoming. Oh, hey, come bring your trees over to my house. Come work with me. And I don't have a long story other than we brought our trees over to this club member's house, and he taught us and worked with us, and I'm sure we learned something that day. So thank you for being so welcoming, and glad we're still all in touch.
I have one quick funny story. So I've only been here for 3 years, but every workshop I've been to, Timm has worked on a tree. In fact, it was hard to pick a tree to bring tonight to be like, oh, this is what Timm helped me on, because it's every single tree. The one I was tempted to bring but didn't, because it was kind of more of a joke, was we repotted the Zelkova and we get it all done, and we were about to rewire it. And he looks at me and goes, it's too tall. It's like, okay, just hack it. And we just had the stump in a pot, and I'm looking at him terrified. Like, what did we just do? And he's like, trust the process. And I just shook my head like, there's no way. And I'm happy to announce it has back budded and is beautiful. It's growing a lovely branch, and I have now learned to trust the process because of you.
Oh, hi, Timm. Well, like everybody else here, you've been such a part of my bonsai journey. I think I saw you at every workshop when I first started, and like Gina was quite surprised by what you did to the trees. But I think you were the person that most made me able to realize that the pruning of the trees, the cutting of the trees is what really turned them into beautiful pieces. You invited us to your house as well and repotted, and again, the welcoming of you and other people in this club, it was part of what really fueled my passion for bonsai. And then more recently, you were kind enough to come over and work with that azalea as I was getting ready to have the tour at the house, and was terrorized about having the tour. And you were there, and I just really appreciate you and want you to know that.
I have one quick story, and it's not even a bonsai story. We moved into a house 5 years ago, and it had a cherry tree that was too large for the backyard. And Timm was kind enough to offer to help us trim it. I thought, trim it, a couple feet. 75% of that tree was on the ground by the time we finished, but it looks beautiful to this day. And he's helped me not only with bonsai, but also helping us in our yard and managing trees in our yard. So thank you, Timm. Appreciate that. Anybody else? Timm, come on up. We have something for you, a couple of things. Timm is in charge of the raffle, so we thought it was only fitting that you get some raffle tickets. to use whenever you wish. The last thing we have is a certificate for you that says American Bonsai Association of Sacramento bestows our highest award to Timm Johnson, honorary lifetime membership. And thank you.
Okay, thanks to everyone for coming out and being tortured through my presentation. Okay, and I'd like to thank the club members and everyone that gave me support in my endeavor in the club and everything like that. And I want the people that gave testimonials to know that I was watching and I was listening to what you were saying. Luckily, no one said anything negative because I do hold grudges. Okay, once again, thanks everyone. Thank you so, so much. Yeah.
So we're going to start with the show and tell. And so what I'd like to do is you were asked to bring in trees that either you purchased from or obtained from Timm, or Timm has helped you with the styling. So I would like for you to share that information briefly, and then we'll continue. So it looks like, whose planting is this? All right, Clarence, tell us about it.
I got some of those. Some of those were Earl Fong's trees, and Timm was helping him out with some trees, and he passed on some to me. Now I brought that in because I've been working on that all week, getting it pruned out, and you'll notice I haven't touched this one right here. These two right here. And you can see the difference between the two. It takes a lot of work to trim those guys. And I have another one here. Oh, this one here. Same thing, takes a lot of work to get that done. And what you want to do, you want to open it up so that a bird, you can look through the trees. You'll notice this one I haven't finished. You can't look through that tree. It's just a big blob. So if anybody want to give me some advice on that, I'll take it.
Looks like you're doing well as it is. And whose azalea? Was this for the?
Ignore the azalea. No, that's, yeah, it's to work on. And then the pine tree's mine also. Yeah. No. It's here for show and tell. Yeah. Okay. This black, spindly black pine. I started from seed in 2015, and I worked on it with Timm in my first club work group. And I had neglected it, so it had very long internodes and lent itself to bungine only. And Timm very grudgingly helped me work on it. He expressed how much he didn't like pines, but then he helped me. And yeah, it's got a lot of sentimental value for a lot of reasons, but that's definitely one of them. And I didn't have a chance to talk earlier, but I just wanted to say thank you, Timm. You're an incredibly thoughtful person, and I appreciate it.
So this bald cypress forest, you may or may not remember it. Timm did a demo, and he brought in what I thought were like 9 dead sticks because there wasn't a stick of green on it. And he created a forest, and I was lucky enough to get to have it in my garden. It's obviously a work in progress, but that's Timm's bald cypress. We did the Kingsville. Yes. It is in a tray with some water in it, yes. It sits in a tray with And it probably has about a half an inch of water around it. So who's Black Pine? I want to hear this story. Oh, this is Tim's Black Pine that Renee takes care of. Right?
Yeah, since Tim isn't really happy, he's not really fond of conifers and pines in particular. He has this gorgeous black pine that ends up in my yard to take care of, and I've had it for about a year now. I repotted it and fertilized it and put it into lots of sun, and it's doing beautifully. And I'm going to probably decandle it next month and keep it moving along in its development. Yes, you may.
Okay, Renee and I, we trade off. I don't care for conifers, but I do like this pine. So I would work on her azalea, and then she in turn would work on my pine or vice versa. And so this is the agreement that she and I have. So if she got that healthy, I could not keep it healthy. And because it's the last thing I would look at. And she's not too fond of working on the Satsuki. And so I can go there and play with her trees. So that's the way we trade off.
Yes. Works out really good. So I guess pomegranate. Oh, wow.
That's my flowering pomegranate. It doesn't have any provenance from Tim, but in a way, I kind of relate it to Tim. Years ago, Tim and I were kind of bantering, joking around, and I kidded him about his azaleas. I said, we like to grow trees, not flowers. And he's never let me forget it. But now I have some trees with flowers, and my pomegranate flowers every year, and I actually think of Tim every time it does because I've got a flower.
Paul's attitude is that azalea are not bonsai. I forgot, you said it, you said it. Right. And therefore he tried, but he does not have enough experience to keep them alive.
Only 40 years in bonsai. Steve brought this in for the workshop. So he said to skip it. Whose azalea is this? You want to talk about it? For the workshop? You never get sure. Beautiful. Oh, well, let's fix that. Oh, wow. Beautiful. And whose tree is this?
These two small azaleas near the end, I got at Maruyama's in 2022, and I just brought them to the workshop, the club workshop in April. And Tim helped me cut away anything that didn't look like bonsai on them. And what I really appreciated about that workshop was Tim emphasized that everything is my decision. He's just giving his opinion. And if he said to do something that I didn't want to do, I didn't have to do it. So I mostly did what Tim suggested.
And who's is this one? I heard me. Ah.
That is a Cascade Snow Rose that Tim has worked on with me, I think at least 3 workshops. But when we first started, it was a mess and I was trying to learn how to wire. And I remember, you probably don't remember this, but the top part, we just heard this very large crack. I mean, both paused and my eyes got real big, and without skipping a beat, you're like, and we're going to mend that, and kept moving forward as if nothing happened. And I was just like, okay. So it's coming along, and I have gotten much better at understanding the art of cascades because of you.
And this was ours, and we haven't done anything with it other than Tim is always telling me I have too many trees, which is true. But at the spring sale, it just touched me and I bought it and it happened to be Tim. So that even made it even better. It's rosemary and I just love the dead wood on it. And I know it needs a little haircut. We'll get to that, but I'm enjoying the flowers now and I have another tree from Tim. So that, I think, is anybody else brought anything? Is this yours? Whose is this? Oh. It's gorgeous. You're not cutting those off, are you? Wow, that's great. And then this one?
We took it out of our backyard maybe about 5, 6 years ago, and I think it's probably around a 50-year-old tree. And I was lucky enough to have Tim come over recently and really help me begin to style it. So, yeah, the trunk is really nice. Thank you.
On that azalea, like she said, she dug that from her yard and she had potted it, kept too much of the yard soil on there. And so when we took it out of the pot it was in, excuse me, she kept too much yard soil and she also included part of it in Kanuma. So we took it out of the pot and we washed it away. And the part that had the Kanuma had healthy roots. Okay, the part that had the garden soil had not really grown that much. And so what I'm saying is that if you're going to transfer from garden soil or any other soil into Kanuma, you have to completely wash all of the old soil away. So we did that in the tree as a result. Now it's extremely healthy. Okay, Tina wants to know when can you bare root an azalea, correct? During the month of March primarily. During the month of March. You get a jet of water and just wash everything, as much soil as you can. Okay, post-flowering azaleas. This is my operating kit. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Renee? Can I play with this? It's dangerous. Right. Okay, usually when usually when flowers are about 75% spent, that's when we start pruning after flowering. And the first thing we'd have to do is take out the flowers themselves. And you take that all the way down. Could I move one side? Okay, yeah. And so the first thing you'd want to do is go in and remove the flowers all the way down to the area where the flower is growing. Okay, and I'll just do a small part here. I took this is easier, much easier than the one there that's overly grown. Yeah, okay, thank you. I realized I didn't have that right. Okay, right. You would, right? Yes, because we're post-blooming. So you want to make sure everything is off. If you don't do that, the flowers can turn into a seed, which takes energy from the plant itself, and it doesn't grow as healthy as it should be. I'll just take one small section here. But I hate cutting off flowers because this plant is really not past its peak. On June 15th, we're having a workshop at Doty's house, the president's house. And anyone that wants to sign up, if you want to, you can bring azaleas and I can give you a little bit more time and attention on those. If you don't have azaleas, still sign up for the workshop. And then someone else can help you with the other trees, the other plants. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is that if the flower was growing here, it's been the flower tip, I would cut it all the way down to the base. All right. If I want it short, I can take it back even farther. And what happens where you make that cut is where your next year's growth will start. Okay, where you make the cut is where next year's growth will start. And you don't want to prune azaleas anytime after the latter part of July, first part of August, because at that time it's already starting to set flower buds for the next year. So in pruning off later than that, you're cutting off potential flowers. Excuse me? Well, yeah, before the end of July, yeah. Yeah. It's going to take 3 or 4 months for them to set flower buds. So you want to have a longer growing period if you can. So I'm just doing one small area right here. And I'll leave Renee 1 or 2 flowers so she can enjoy the plant even more. Let me see here. I'm going to take something out here to show you basically what we'll be doing. I'm going to take this out here. Okay, the way azaleas grow is that you have 4 or 5 stems coming out from one area. 4 or 5 stems, right? Let's say this right here is the branch itself. In this case, we only have 3, okay? So what I would ordinarily do is anything that's growing straight down, if there are 5, anything that's growing down, straight down, I would take out. Anything going straight up, I would take out. That would usually leave you 3 on that particular one. I would take one of those 3 out where you're down to just 2. And then stop the tip, because if you don't, all the energy there will grow longer and grow out of shape, out of style. Okay. It's basically what you're doing throughout the tree. Now, keep in mind, you don't really have to do this with flowers. If you go up and down, especially on 33rd Street here, those beautiful flowering azaleas that people have there, they don't do this. They don't have their gardeners do this. They just go, let's chop, 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 and that's good enough. But if you want a superior looking plant and something that's going to be contained the way we do things, you want to do this to keep it from growing out of shape real fast. Sure. Yeah. You know.
Why are you not doing that now?
Okay. Renee brought this tool over to me because she knows I will do that. I was going to show this to you. What I'm showing you is the way that it should be done. But then if you have a lot of azaleas, or if you're lazy, like I am, what you do is just go through and just cut off everything. That's what you're talking about, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
That's so much easier, right? But in doing so, keep in mind the shape that you want the plant to be in. Okay. And it's what I do at my house. I'm going to show you this. But this is a more advanced technique. But keep in mind while you're doing this, you want to maintain that irregular or asymmetrical triangle, long side, short side. And so in doing this, while you're taking these out, that's what you would do. And once you get it down to the shape that you want it in, then you would go through, like I was just doing, and eliminate, like in here. There was a flower there before, I would take that out. There's some growth trying to grow, I would take that out. And so where I've left this right here is where your flowers will be next year. In here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Renee said I can do what I wanted to do, so. Okay, once again, okay. Azaleas like plants, they grow in whorls. So you get 5 coming out in one area. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so like I was mentioning before, anything that's growing straight up, I would take out. Okay, well, we only have 4, I'm sorry. Then anything going straight down, I would take out. That would leave 3, and I would take that down. We only have 2. I stop the terminal growth on each one of those. And then that's where your flowers will start next year. And it can be pretty tedious in doing this, but I said, you don't have to do this. But if you want a plant that looks real good and is styled in bonsai the way we try to, you want to get something like this. Get it down to 2. If you have 3, what happens? Well, okay, this is perfect, okay? Used to be anyhow, in the good old days, right? So you can see this is tapering all the way down. We get right here, all of a sudden, all the energy comes out to here and you get that bulb right there. It's fat right there. And so with the azaleas, you get the very same thing. And so let's say I would take one that's going straight down out, one that's going straight up out, that would leave 3. And I would take one of those 3 out, depending on where I want the branch to grow. Take this out, then you'd have 2 of them. And that way you avoid forming that bulb, which doesn't look that good. But it takes a while to do this, especially if you have a lot of plants. Here we have 3 in one area. Okay, I cut it down, and so I'll stop the terminal growth here and here. Now, if you need extension on a branch, you wouldn't stop the terminal growth. Just let it grow unchecked. But if you're trying to maintain a shape on the branch itself, then you would actually take it down to where you only have 2. Okay, so it's one straight up. There's only 4 here. We have 1, 2, 3. If I wanted everything to come to the right side, I would take the one here out. If I wanted to go to the left side, I would take this one here out. I wanted to fan out, I would take out the center. And then once again, stop the terminal growth. And you do that throughout your plant. When you get through, you think that you've killed your plant. All you've done really is to free up the energy to support the growth that you have left. Yes.
The question was, it's good to do it by around Father's Day?
Could start new trees if you wanted to.
For azaleas, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay. Anytime you can do that. Azalea is an evergreen plant, okay? And all you really need is warm weather. The roots don't grow until the soil temperature is about 60 degrees. 60 degrees. So if you make it too soon, the soil is too cold and it will not strike roots. So right, what you're saying is April, May, June is a good time for that. The cuttings, yes, if you have Canuma soil, or you can put it in regular soil if you want to, but eventually you want to transfer that over into Canuma soil. Yeah. And so when you're sipping your Canuma soil, the little fines that you have right there, you can use those for cuttings. Okay, I just did a small part of it right here. It's about an hour's worth of playing on this tree in order to get it to it. It looks like this when you're finished. No flowers. Most of the leaves are gone. And we stop the tips. And this is what we'll do on all of the. Someone else had one. Oh, okay. All right. So that's basically what I've done on this tree.
It's beautiful.
But I'll be taking it home, and if you come to the workshop on the 15th, I'll have it finished and I'll give it back to Renee at that time.